To finish up our work in authenticating users, we want to add some validation to our Create Account page. We want to add validation to the form here so that we don't accept any usernames that are, for example, less than 3 characters. Right now, for any value that we provide for the username, it's going to be accepted since we don't have any form validation. So let's head back to Create Account. Unfortunately, this is going to be very easy since we've already associated a form key, a global key, with our form to help manage our current state. So now within our submit function, we're going to create a final variable called form, which we'll assign to form key.current state, since we're going to need to reference this a couple of times. So now we can say form.save, but before we call save and update our username piece of state with the value that's been typed into the form field, we want to perform some validation. And that's going to be possible by adding another function to our text form field, which is called validator. So for validator, once again, we're going to get the value that's typed into the input, which we'll name as val. And here within this function, we want to add a number of conditions. If it matches one of these conditions, we want to return some sort of error text, which will display within our form field. So for example, username too short. Otherwise, if our validation passes successfully, if we don't have any problems, we're just going to return null. So for our first condition, we want to check to see that if val.trim, we want to use the trim method on val in order to trim off any white space, to make sure a user doesn't just type in a number of spaces into our input. If val.trim.length is less than 3, or if val.isEmpty, if there's nothing typed into the input, we want to return our error message of username too short. Otherwise, so we're providing a condition to say if our username doesn't have enough characters, if it has less than 3 characters, then we're going to say the username's too short. Otherwise, if the username's too long, we'll add an else if val.trim.length is, say, greater than 12 characters, then we'll return the error message that username too long. Otherwise, else will just return null. One other thing I'd recommend here for our form, to immediately execute this validator function when a user types into it, we can provide the boolean of auto-validate to true. And then heading back up to our submit function, we'll use our current state from our form key to say if form.validate, validate is going to go through all of our validator functions one more time to make sure all of our text form fields are valid. If this resolves to true, then we'll be able to save that text value in state and then return the username to the previous route. Now on top of adding validation, there's one more thing that I want to do, and that is to show a snack bar, a little pop-up in the bottom of the screen to say welcome username, to welcome the given user when they sign up. So in order to display a snack bar, we're going to need to create another global key that's of type scaffold state. So this key is going to be associated with our scaffold, and we'll name it _scaffold key. So we'll head down to our scaffold and provide that to the key argument right here. So since we're associating it with our scaffold, we can now create our snack bar, and we'll do that after we call form.save, but before we navigate back to the previous route. So we'll add a variable called snack bar that we can make of type snack bar, and this snack bar message is going to have the content of welcome username. This needs to be wrapped within a text widget. And then to show that snack bar, we can take scaffold key dot current state dot show snack bar and pass our snack bar variable to that method. And then in order to show this snack bar for a little while before we navigate back, we're going to put navigator.pop in a timer. So timer is going to make sure that this function is called only after a given duration. So our first argument is going to be that duration, and we'll say that should be 2 seconds. So after 2 seconds, we're going to pass in a function, an anonymous function, where we call navigator.pop. And in order for this to work, we'll need to import the Dart async package. So once we've added all of that, we can save. And to test this out, I'm going to remove my users collection and sign in with the same user as before. So make sure to log out. I'll do a hot restart as well. I'll sign in once again. We'll be taken to create account, and we see automatically when we focus on this input, the validation is run and we get the message username too short. We can provide some white space and it's still going to give us that error. If we provide just enough characters, less than 12, this is going to be valid and we can submit our form, but if it's too long, then we're going to get our error message. And note that when we try to hit submit, we're not redirecting. If we provide a username that's again at least 3 characters, we can hit submit. We see our snack bar at the bottom, welcome read, and we're navigated back to our timeline. And again, we see in our database our users collection with a user document including the username that we provided to the input. Now there's one last thing that I want to do, and that is to make sure for the header associated with our create account page, on our create account page, we want to remove the back button. So we're going to get an error if we try to click on the back button while we're in the process of providing our username. So in order to remove that, we can head to our header widget within widgets header.dart, and we'll add another property here that we'll be able to set dynamically. And that property is automatically, it should be on our app bar, automatically imply leading. So if we want to remove the back button, we need to set this to false. So let's say we have another argument that we pass to header called remove back button. By default, this will be set to false. So if remove back button is true, if we pass in to our header remove back button true, we want to set automatically imply leading to false. So we'll add a ternary remove back button is true. That will be false, otherwise it's going to be true. So now we can save both of these files, and we should no longer have our back button show up when our user is trying to pick out their username.